Yo, what is good with y'all? It's your boy KAG, and today we're going to be talking about the Nintendo NX being a handheld or a hybrid, and I'm going to tell y'all exactly why I actually believe that this is the way it's actually going to go down. Now, I recently did a video on it being a hybrid, but this time we're going to focus on the handheld aspect, and if you want to check out that video, I'll leave it down there in the description. But anyways, without any further ado, let's get started talking about these facts. Now, if we all remember way back when, in February of 26, 2011, in Japan, the Nintendo 3DS was released. And March 27th, 2011, is released in North America. March 25th, Europe. March 31st, Australia. Now, what do all those have in common? The fact that they're released in March. What else is being released in March? The Nintendo NX is being released in March. Now, if we look at the dates, how many years is it between there and now? It's exactly 6 years. So it would be exactly 6 years that the 3DS has been on the market. And how often do we have the console or the handheld be on the market? It's generally 5 to 6 years. Now, the handhelds, they stretched it out. They've been going about 6 years. Now, even though we do have some games that are coming out for the 3DS as of late, there's not that many big hitters that are coming out. I mean, there's a couple big hitters that are coming out, but in all honesty, there's not that many big hitters. Now, on top of that, so we now know that it's been exactly 6 years when the NX will be released. Now, what also do we know? Well, we know that because they're trying to do a global launch, generally that would mean that, it hits all territories very close to each other or at the exact same day. Now, if we look at these dates, the 3DS was released within weeks and sometimes days within each other of it being released. So, that's another thing that actually makes sense. Consoles, not so much. You can have maybe a month between a console hits one spot and then it hits another. Now, judging by that, that's another hint that it could actually be a handheld of some sort or maybe a hybrid. Now, on top of that, let's go ahead and let's look at some other information that was actually brought up. Now, whenever they talk about the NX, they always say it's neither a replacement for the Wii U nor the 3DS. Now, if you notice something, every time they've actually talked about this, they've never excluded the 3DS. They always say, nor the 3DS, after they already say, nor the Wii U. Now, the reason for this is because generally, whenever you have something said like that, it means that, hey, this may also be affected right here. The 3DS may be affected, which in this case, that would make sense. If this was actually a handheld or a hybrid of some sort, it would actually get affected by the release of the NX. So that's another case right there. On top of that, you have them saying that Animal Crossing is coming out on mobile, as well as Fire Emblem is coming out on mobile, and it's supposed to have a counterpart which is supposed to be on the Nintendo NX. Now, if we look at Fire Emblem and we look at Animal Crossing, what do those generally come out on? They generally come out on the handheld. They come out on 3DS. They don't generally come out on console. And I mean, they do, but not so much. They're not as big of a hit as they are on handhelds. So, like your Animal Crossing, you had City Folks that came out, and then you had Animal Crossing New Leaf. Animal Crossing New Leaf sold way more copies than City Folks sold. So that also makes sense that, the handhelds, this thing would be a handheld and not just a traditional console. That's another hint that it could either be a handheld or it could be a hybrid of both. Now, on top of that, let's look at the date of when it's supposed to be released, which is March. Now, if you look at March, generally, you see that, your 3DS did not have to release before the holiday season. Handhelds do not have to release before the holiday season in order for them to be a success. They can release after the holiday season has already passed. That way, generally you have your consoles which will release in like November or before the actual holiday comes up, because they want to get those initial sales for the console, right before that holiday season hits. So, if you look at that as well, that also leads more towards the favor of it being a handheld, because, handhelds do better most of the time during the year. It doesn't really matter when they release. But with it lining up with exactly 6 years from the date of the 3DS release, it would make sense that they would actually go ahead and release the NX as a handheld, and that would come out in March. Now, another reason why I can understand it being pushed back to March. And here's another point that y'all can bring up whenever y'all have a discussion about this. Well, we all know Pokemon is coming out in November. November 18th, Pokemon drops on the 3DS, 2DS, right? Now, if the Nintendo NX was a handheld and it didn't release with Pokemon, then why would people go out and buy the Nintendo NX? They would have no reason to buy the Nintendo NX because they just got a new Pokemon game that just dropped, and there would be no point in getting it if it's not going to be able to play the new Pokemon. That kind of makes sense. Now, if Pokemon was actually going to be dropped at the exact same time as the NX release, then yes, that would make sense. But Pokemon plays by their own rules, and they do not release, just because a new console is coming out. They aren't going to just drop a Pokemon game on there just to, counteract the fact that there's going to be another console coming out. They do their own thing. So, it would make sense that they would go ahead and release in March. And it could be that they were actually planning on releasing, the NX version as well as the 3DS version at the exact same time. But maybe there was, more work that had to be done on the NX version. And so they're like, hey, we can't release this. We can't release it at this time because we still gonna release Pokemon, but it won't go hand in hand with the NX. That version is not gonna come till later. And generally you want both of them to come out at the exact same time. So they may have pushed it off, and they're gonna release a newer version of maybe that Pokemon game or a revamped version of it, later that March. So that's also a possibility. So, it kind of makes sense that it would be a handheld if you add up all these things together. Another thing, they talk about affordability. They want it to be affordable for people. That way, they make a lot of money. Also, you have Monotronics, which is the cartridge-based company that makes all the cartridges for Nintendo. They make all the cartridges. Now, they also make the 3DS cartridges. So what does this mean? That means that, yes, the NX could be taking cartridges because it's a handheld. I mean, that does make sense, right? If they said, well, we expect to sell more cartridges if the NX is a handheld, yeah, definitely. You will see more cartridges being sold on the market. So that's also, another possibility. And for those people that are, concerned about the Wii U, hey, maybe you'll get some more time with your Wii U even though there's no games announced for it. But you're supposed to be getting that new Zelda. But that also maybe thinks that, hey, maybe this is a handheld. I mean, maybe it is a hybrid. Because if Zelda's supposed to be coming out in March, and Zelda's also supposed to be coming out on the NX as well as the Wii U, then either this handheld has to be extremely powerful, or it has to be a hybrid of some sorts, right? Unless they were going to release the NX version way late, November when they released the console, but I seriously doubt that. But yeah, like I said, everything tends to lead up to it being a handheld or a hybrid. The dates, exactly 6 years from the 3DS, Animal Crossing and Fire Emblem having counterparts, which is supposed to be, you know, more than likely a mobile game. I mean, Kimishima and Iwata both saying it's neither a replacement for the 3DS or the Wii U, or should I say the Wii U nor the 3DS. And every time that they bring it up, they also mention the 3DS. So that also makes sense. But anyways, if you agree with any of this stuff, make sure you hit that like button. And as always, if you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe. We talk about all things Nintendo here. And I will talk to you on another video. Y'all have a good one. Peace.